Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. So this is the first video in Book Smart art reviews, and I figured that Anton Chekhov is probably a good place to start because he is one of my favorites to analyze, and I strongly believe that he understood and represented the human condition better than anyone else. And I have written my literature dissertation about Chekhov, so I figured that would be a great place to start. I would like to talk about ward number 6 and the Black Friar. So, first of all, um, I am going to go off on my dissertation and add more thoughts because a dissertation was limited, while this video kind of leaves space for personal opinions and views as well. So first of all, when I first read these two stories for my dissertation, I felt like it was a very interesting choice to choose hysteria, or just label it insanity, what these characters have gone through. And as I researched, I found that hysteria was actually like a catch-all in Chekhov's era, in the 1880s and early 1900s, which would mean that hysteria could have meant depression, anxiety, insomnia, manic depression, whatever you can imagine. Even schizophrenia was classified as hysteria, so that would be no wonder. And what I definitely find interesting about Chekhov as an author is how in all of the stories we see multiple points of view and multiple stages of hysteria. Uh, I just find it fascinating. Obviously, the main characters are Rugin in the case of war number 6, and in in uh, in the case of the Black Friar, it would be Kovrin. Uh, and basically, they are the two characters who, quote unquote, go insane. And I remember my literature teacher first asked me, okay, can you define insane for me? Look up the dictionary, look up a DSM manual, and define insane. And the thing is, one cannot define insane, apparently. And that is something very fascinating for me to see that Chekhov steers away from putting these characters' mental issues into such a constraint. And I think he did that these symptoms justice by that. So basically, we have these two mentally ill characters, Ragin and Kovrin, and they live in the world, and the world starts kind of realizing that, oh, wait, um, maybe not everything is okay. And of course, they fight to look the part of a upstanding citizen. They fight to appear as normal and as sane, quote unquote, as possible. And what I liked about analyzing these two pieces of art in a parallel is that there is one fundamental difference in them. In ward number 6, the doctor does not really experience symptoms. His symptom is becoming dismayed at the world, while in the case of the Black Friar, there are actual symptoms that would warrant a diagnosis and looking into, of course. So that's a major difference, and the resolution is not too different. Spoiler alert, both of these characters end up dying as a direct and indirect result of their mental illness. And basically, my biggest my biggest sore thumb in these stories was how both of these characters start off at the top of their respective societies. So they start off as well, a doctor and a successful writer and lecturer, and they are highly respected and highly desirable for marriage, and they are very, very lively. They have very predictable, very average, very unbothersome lives. You know, they don't bother anyone and no one bothers them either. So basically, this is how they start off. This is how we see them first. And then we get introduced to the conflict. In the case of the Black Friar, the conflict is, well, obviously, the Black Friar, because Corinne has hallucinations about this said Black Friar, and he has delusions of being a chosen one to understand the world's spirituality. While in ward number 6, the doctor just suggests that maybe, just maybe, these people who are in the ward need more communication, need more understanding, need more empathy to treat them right and to make them get better. And because that's outside of the societal norms, like sitting down with a patient and talking to them, that is why people start to worry about the doctor, and people recommend he take a break and travel across Europe to clear his head. But as he does that, as he travels, he starts to become more and more sheltered against the sane people that surround him. He sees them as liars, disingenuous, and their conversations as meaningless and unintelligent. And obviously, the nail in the coffin for him is giving an outside voice and sounding off about this feeling that he has. While in the case of the Black Friar, he continues to work hard, he continues to be inspired until one day his wife catches him speaking to the friar, who she doesn't see, and she freaks out. She calls her father, and they start him on a heavy regimen of treatment. And I think a very interesting sentiment is exactly that. Exactly how these men were treated. And some of the quotes that I love from the Black Friar the is the same uh, sentiment. So here goes in a non-comprehensive order. So here goes. If Mohammed had taken potassium and bromide for his nerves and only worked 2 hours a day, he wouldn't he wouldn't have been a remarkable man, would have left as much as to prosperity as his dog. In the long run, doctors and kind relatives will turn humanity into a lot of morons, mediocrity will pass for genius, civilization will perish. If only you knew. And the next one is I had megalomania, but I was happy. I was interesting and original. Now I've grown rational and stable. I'm just like anybody else and nobody. Life bores me. Oh, how cruelly you treated me. I did have hallucinations, but did they harm anyone? Who did they harm? That's what I would like to know. So in these two quotes, we see that a very commonly shared sentiment that greatness comes from struggle and internal struggle, and that in order to really appreciate these mentally ill people's symptoms and struggles, you need to listen. And the next one is, why did you try to cure me? All these bromides, idleness, warm baths, supervision, this cowardly fear with every mouthful, every step, all this will finally turn me into a complete idiot. Which also something that mentally ill people quite often face is that kind relatives just treat us like we are like some fine china that will break at the wind. Often we might be sensitive, but that doesn't mean that we need to be cuddled. Definitely not. And and that's definitely a theme in both of these both of these pieces of art. In word number 6, Ruggins says hundreds upon hundreds of quote unquote insane people are running around because you, in your ignorance, are unable to tell them apart from the healthy. And with this statement, from these statements rather, from these characters, we get to see what Chekhov feels about this situation. It feels like he is condemning society for dumbing down and for condemning the mentally ill instead of helping them, and for cuddling the mentally ill instead of helping them. Because cuddling is not helping. Cuddling does not help to improve, to better, and cuddling is an easy way out of challenge. It's an easy way out instead of facing whatever's wrong, and it stops improvement and stops an earnest and honest and genuine conversation about whatever the hell is going on. And in such a way, whenever I feel like shit and whenever I feel like my mental illness is overwhelming, I like to read Chekhov because of this, because he really seems to understand this struggle. And especially in ward number 6, the doctor is not really sick. All he does is realize and speak out on behalf of those who are. They have insomniacs and psychopaths on the ward. I mean, by the description that Chekhov gives of these characters. Um, but he doesn't give them like labels. He doesn't label them, he's this, he's that. The only person that we really get a label for is an insomniac man. Otherwise, they are just there. They are there, and yeah, they have symptoms, but their symptoms are not one that harm anyone. Their symptoms are, oh well, you are weird and society frowns upon that, so we're just gonna put you up in here. And many healthy looking people have very well hidden problems that they keep to themselves. So these two novels are quite short. I think neither of them. The Black Friar is about 50 pages, 60 maybe at most, and Ward number 6 is like 200 pages, if my memory serves, and they are very good reads. And I think that Chekhov quite accurately hits the nail in the head with how these issues are either swept under the rug or sensationalized. And through the supporting characters, we see how these men fall from grace. Ragin is told, you should stop drinking vodka. You should stop going into the ward. You should take time off of work. You should leave work. You have the money to do so. And Kovrin is told to take bromides. To his wife leaves him and tells him, oh, how I wish you dead. How I hate you from the bottom of my heart, because he experiences symptoms of mental illness and doesn't necessarily want them quote unquote fixed, as if that's possible. And that's what's great about Chekhov. He doesn't take sides, he doesn't represent either side as right or wrong. Both sides have a point, obviously, and I think Chekhov treads very gracefully along that line. I think he does great with just cutting through the middle and pointing out how mentally ill people often had, and to this day still have, their rights ignored and stomped over because, well, they are mentally ill, so what are you gonna do? And represents how those people around mentally ill people have it hard too, because obviously seeing someone you care for struggle and experience outlandish symptoms like hallucinations is hard. Like obviously it's harder on the person experiencing it, but it's hard on anyone who sees it. Obviously it's scary, and obviously it can be very, very shocking and very, very gutting to see, because you love that person, you care for that person, and obviously you want them to be healthy, and hallucinations are obviously not a hallmark of a healthy working brain. But we see that the supporting cast, especially in ward number 6, there is a security guard, Nikita, and he worships the doctor at the beginning. He only takes orders from the doctor. He's like, yes sir, yes sir, yes sir. And then he ends up killing the doctor inadvertently, by beating him when he gets admitted to the ward. And and both of these men are highly respected and actually um, highly admired in their communities. And here they are, as they exhibit symptoms or speak out on those behalf who exhibit symptoms. They go falling down on this hierarchy until people want them dead, or wish them dead rather than want them dead, and until they die inadvertently because of their mental illness. And and my biggest, slap in the face was when in ward number 6 Ragin is told, just stop drinking vodka. And when he discusses how he feels kind of drained and bored. And I think that Chekhov does a marvelous job at representing how day-to-day life can drain and numb a person to the point when it becomes a symptom. That's why it's called burnout. And Chekhov marvelously describes how it works internally. And even though it doesn't give it a name, but both of these characters have burnout initially, and then it gets blown out of proportion and gets worse because they don't take care of it. And uh, and I think that he represents it well, how fear and sensationalizing mental health issues, and how society deems anything out of the perfectly ordinary is just mentally ill and unreliable. And if anything out of the preset order, you know, school, work, marriage, kids, die. If you do anything differently, or if you want and express how you want to do anything differently, you're gonna get labeled and marked as something outlandish. And that still stands today. If you have a vivid hair color, or if you dress in an unusual way, if you speak openly about many topics, really, then you just get side eyes and this reaction of like scolding and judgment. And I think that is perfectly represented in this work, in these pieces by Chekhov. And I think I would love to see how Chekhov would write in the 21st century. I would just love to see that. But alas, sadly, he's dead. And on the other side, luckily, we have other good writers who did just as good as Chekhov did. And I would like to close off this video by a good and one of my favorite Chekhov quotes, which is, "Any idiot can face a crisis. It's day-to-day living that drains a person." And I think that's very true. in At least in my case, I can face a crisis, but day-to-day living where everything is the same over and over and over again, that's what drives me off the wall, really. So this is an analysis of Chekhov to start out this channel with. If you have any book suggestions or series suggestions that you would like me to react to, sound off in the comments, and see you the next time. Bye.